They told him to wait. He didn't. They told him to negotiate. He refused, because Ibrahim Traoré had seen enough. Enough gold leaving the mines. Enough debt returning in chains. So he struck first, and what happened next made the world take him seriously. If you're ready to see what real economic rebellion looks like, subscribe now. Comment your thoughts below. Would your leader dare to defy the money masters? The day began like any other. But by noon, every phone in the central bank of Burkina Faso had stopped ringing. Traoré had ordered an audit, not of numbers, but of loyalties. "I want to know," he said, "which signatures lead back to Paris." Accountants panicked. One deputy resigned. And behind closed doors, whispers turned into warnings. This wasn't reform. This was a declaration of war, economic, silent, but lethal. France responded quickly. A formal communiqué called Traoré's audit a violation of multilateral trust. Translation? He touched the wire they swore was disconnected. News anchors labeled him unstable. Analysts warned of investor flight. But in the streets of Ouagadougou, something else spread: hope. Because for once, someone in power was asking the questions they had shouted for decades. And he wasn't backing down. One morning, a confidential IMF briefing leaked. Burkina Faso, it read, has become financially unpredictable. Internal stabilization may be required. Internal stabilization. Two words that often mean external interference. Traoré wasn't surprised. "They'll use the market like a drone strike," he said. Quiet, distant, and precise. But this time he was ready. And he had a plan they weren't expecting. Traoré met with local economists, crypto developers, and gold reserve officers. "What if we decouple?" he asked. "Not by burning bridges, but by building our own road?" The idea was born. A dual-track system, one for immediate use, backed by gold. One for the future, digital, decentralized, and African-built. Paris laughed. Ouagadougou didn't. And in the villages, the word Afripay began to echo. As Afripay was being whispered in markets and youth groups, the banks began to shake. French-owned firms quietly froze credit extensions. A technical glitch delayed public sector salaries. News outlets blamed Traoré. But he held a press conference with just 5 words. Africa must own its money. That line hit harder than sanctions. And for millions watching online, it sparked something older than economics. Memory. If that line hit you too, type "own it" in the comments and like this video to spread the fire. Meanwhile, in France, officials scrambled. Economic reports were redacted. Private memos urged media reframing of Burkina Faso's economy. A diplomatic envoy was dispatched, not with aid, but with options. "Reconsider," they said. "Slow down, and we can help." But Traoré didn't want help. He wanted history to stop repeating itself. And in his silence, they heard the worst answer of all. No. One night, the lights went out, not in the slums, but in the Ministry of Finance. Files vanished. Servers went down. A cyber attic, they claimed, but Traoré knew better. This wasn't foreign, he said. It was familiar. A high-ranking official was later caught transferring encrypted files to an account in Geneva. The enemy, it seemed, wasn't just across the sea. It was in the mirror. Traoré responded swiftly. Within 24 hours, 5 senior advisors were dismissed. An emergency task force, economic, not military, was activated. Its mission? Trace every contract signed under CFA regulations for the past 30 years. "We don't need a coup," he said. "We need a calculator, a backbone, and the truth." And as the investigation began, so did something else. Fear, not in Traoré, but in those who once laughed at him. The audit uncovered billions in contracts signed with consultants linked to foreign embassies. Projects paid for but never built. Roads that existed only on paper. This is not corruption, Traoré said. This is colonialism, wearing local faces. He broadcasted the findings live. For the first time, the people didn't just feel exploited, they saw the receipts. And trust in the old system cracked open like a rotten vault. Across Africa, other nations took notice. Mali sent envoys. Guinea sent economists. In Niger, students painted murals of Traoré holding broken chains. Western media warned of regional instability, but for many, it looked like regional awakening. A continent long silenced was beginning to hum with new language. Ownership, coordination, exit plans. And as for Traoré, he wasn't just leading Burkina Faso anymore. He was setting the pace for a continent. At a televised address, Traoré stood beside a chalkboard, not a teleprompter. "You've been told economics is too complex," he said. "But what's complex about fairness?" He drew 3 arrows. Gold gives France. Debt gives Africa. Profit gives somewhere else. "This is not a mystery," he said. "This is theft." The crowd didn't cheer. They roared. Because this time, someone wasn't just naming the problem. He was sketching the exit. 2 weeks later, the government launched a pilot. A local transaction system pegged to Burkina's actual gold reserves. No foreign intermediaries, no approval from Paris. Just raw value, trusted by the people holding it. Merchants in the capital began accepting it. Farmers in the north demanded access. And Afripay, once a whisper, became a reality. Not in theory, but in the market stalls of a rising nation. The response was immediate. France labeled Burkina's new system financial instability. The EU threatened to review trade agreements. A French telecom giant abruptly pulled out, blaming uncertain regulations. But everyone knew why. Afripay was working. And worse, it was spreading. So they did what empires do best. Weaponize dependence. Cut off, isolate, and wait for the pressure to do what bullets can't. Traoré went to the African Union summit with no entourage, no security wall, no translator. He walked in like a soldier. He spoke like a builder. "If they control our money, they control our options," he said. "And if they control our options, then our elections are theater." Some leaders shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded. The hall fell silent. For once, not because no one had the words, but because someone had finally said them. Then came the second strike, a coordinated media storm. Traoré destabilizes West Africa. Burkina Faso faces humanitarian risk. One outlet even called him a threat to modern Africa. But on the ground, aid trucks were still running. Markets were open. Schools were teaching about Afripay. "If the facts won't serve them," Traoré said, "they'll invent fear and sell it as journalism." In response, Traoré did something unexpected. He opened his government's books lab. Budgets, audits, contracts streamed online. "Let the people be the opposition," he said. "If I lie, let them be the proof." The move stunned both allies and critics. Transparency wasn't just political strategy, it became his shield. Because in a world ruled by shadows, nothing burns like daylight. Paris called an emergency summit. Not about war, about wealth. What if Mali joins him? What if Niger backs the currency? What if Afripay goes digital across borders? These were not economic questions. They were existential threats to an order built on African silence. And suddenly, one general from a landlocked country was standing at the gates of global finance, with a blueprint and a backbone. At a Pan-African Economic Forum, Traoré unveiled the draft treaty, a gold-backed, digital, decentralized payment system designed by Africans for Africans. They gave us independence, he said, then sold us dependence. This is not revenge. This is repair, the room erupted. Cameras rolled. Hashtags ignited. And just like that, what began as an audit had become a revolution with code, currency, and conviction. The CFA franc still exists. The pressure hasn't stopped. But neither has the fire, because one man asked a question, and millions dared to answer. This isn't just about Burkina Faso. It's about what happens when the colonized write their own economy, in their own language, with their own tools. Subscribe for Part 3, The Digital Weapon. Comment below. Is this the start of Africa's financial freedom, or just the eye of the storm?